In this video, you will find two parts. Part 1 will be making the shed foundation frame to get ready for pouring the concrete, and Part 2 will be pouring the concrete foundation. To get started in Part 1, you will need a few supplies and tools. 1. Enough 2x4s to frame out your size. In this example, you will see a 5-foot by 9-foot frame being made. 2. You will need some wooden stakes to help secure and level out the frame to the position you want. 3. Screws. 4. Drill and a bit. 5. A hammer. 6. A level. 7. A tape measure to ensure you accurately make the size you want and to square off the frame. 8. A can of spray paint. To get started with your shed foundation, pick the location you want to install your shed. I chose this corner area in my backyard. My Outdoor Living Today shed is 8 feet by 4 feet, and I'm making my concrete foundation 9 feet by 5 feet. This will give me 6 inches on each side around the shed to work with. You can go wider if you feel that is appropriate for your shed size and preference. Here I have framed out the 9 by 5 frame size with the 2x4s. 2x4s came in 8-foot lengths, so I cut off an extra 1-foot piece to make for the 9-foot length and then screwed in a block on the outside to secure it, making a nice 9-foot piece. When you create your foundation frame, be sure to do the measurements from the inside of the 2x4s as outlined by the red arrows. For my purpose, the inside measurements are 9 feet by 5 feet. Now you can place your foundation frame into the position you would like your foundation to be built. Take the spray paint and then spray around the frame on the outside to draw a line to prepare for digging out the ground. Remove the frame so that all you see now is the painted line. Grab your shovel and dig inside the framing line you just painted. Don't worry about having to level out the ground. The idea here is to just rough it out so that your frame can be placed inside and that you have some room to raise and lower the frame for when it comes time to level. To prepare for leveling, you will need to hammer your stakes into the ground. I used 2 stakes for each corner and then 1 more in the middle of each side. This totaled 12 stakes for this size of frame. You can use as many as you find appropriate to make sure the frame is secure and does not easily move once screwed in. Screw the stakes to the framing to level the top of the frame. I started with the lowest point, and be sure to use a level to ensure the top is level. I also made sure that there was a bit of room under the bottom of the 2x4s to make room for the gravel so that the foundation is still 4 inches deep after I install the gravel. Once you have the leveling roughed out, you should now go around the entire frame and check all of the leveling. Make sure that as you stake out the frame, you measure the inside diagonal measurement. Each diagonal measurement should be the same distance. If it's not, then your frame is not square, and you should adjust until you get these 2 measurements the same. Now that the framing is installed and leveled out, I put in some crushed gravel to help with drainage. Level out the ground as best you can. It doesn't have to be checked with a level. For this size foundation, I made sure that I left the foundation 4 inches deep. Now that the framing is ready, we can move on to step 2 and pour the concrete. To get started in part 2, you will need a few supplies and tools. 1 is cement bags. My size recommended 34 66-pound bags. 2, a spare 2x4 to screed the concrete level to the framing. 3, a shovel. 4, a hose with water. 5, a wheelbarrow. 6, a cement mixer, which you can rent if you don't have one, or you can mix in a wheelbarrow. 7, some wire concrete mesh. I went with Quikrete 30 kilogram bags. I used an online calculator to tell me the square feet I needed for my width, length, and depth. It said I would need 45 square feet. As you see in the Quikrete bag, it shows the recommended bags for 50 square feet and 4 inches deep would be 34 bags. I went with 35 bags and had 4 left over. I figured it was better to have a bit extra than not enough. The thought of running out of concrete in the middle of this project was not something I was willing to risk. Here we have the bags of concrete, a cement mixer, and the wheelbarrow with the basic tools I used. Note that I ended up not even using the trowel. I had one handy just in case I thought I would need it. The screeding was good enough for me that I chose to not trowel it smooth. I placed the wire mesh in the foundation and raised it up a bit with a few rocks laying around the yard. You could use anything you want for this. You will also be able to adjust the mesh as you pour in the concrete. This is just to prop up the mesh to make it a bit easier. I used an old cement mixer, but you can rent one for cheap, or you could mix in your wheelbarrow if you don't mind mixing that way. If you use the mixer, then make sure to wet the inside with water and then pour in a bag. If the mix is too dry, it will clump up on you. If it's too wet, add a bit more mix. After a few bags, you're going to find the look and feel of the concrete that you're looking for. Once the concrete is mixed up, you can start to pour it in the foundation area. Here you see us positioning the concrete to one side to get it up to the top of the 2x4s. This will help us screed while we mix concrete and pour concrete. We will work from one side to the other. As you pour concrete, you should adjust your wire mesh so that it sits in the middle of the concrete mix. As you can see, the mesh easily moves around if you find that it is sitting on the ground or coming up to the top of the concrete. We are close to halfway finished, and you can now see that we screed as we pour. Continue to mix concrete, pour, and screed until you finish the foundation. Now that the foundation is full of concrete, you can screed the concrete from one side to the other. After a couple hours of letting the concrete cure, you can run the broom brush across if you want that brushed concrete look. Here is the final slab after 24 hours. Perfectly level, and you can see the brushed concrete roughness created with the brush. After a couple days of letting the concrete cure, I then removed the 2x4 framing.